Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Music Reviewer Podcast. My name's Josh, and today we are doing another episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week. The week being of August 8th. If you're new to Best and Worst Track of the Week, just a quick overview is that I take the new entries coming into the Billboard Hot 100, take one that's the worst, take one that's the best, give every song a letter grade on top of that. And this week is a bit of a first, really, because it is album bomb week. Um, all of the tracks from Taylor Swift's Folklore charted, which the last, I guess, 3 out of 4 episodes have been like this. Um, the only difference being is that I already reviewed Folklore on this podcast. So just a bit of a disclaimer here. If you're more interested in an in-depth review of Folklore, I suggest check out that podcast episode. It's the one that I did right before this one. And yeah, the album was overall just a mixed bag of, I guess, feelings overall on my end. Um, but you'll get a brief overview on this episode. And kind of just piggybacking on top of that, um, since I did cover the album on on this podcast, the the new entries that I didn't cover thoroughly on the review um, will be covered here thoroughly, but the ones that I did cover thoroughly on the review, I'll just give you a letter grade. And if you're more interested in the actual song and what I think, just go check out the episode. So yeah, thanks for joining me. Yeah, so bit of an interesting week overall, despite the album bomb by Taylor Swift. She charted at number 1 with Cardigan, Rockstar by the Baby, and Roddy Ricch has finally left number 1 after several weeks on there. Other than that, there's some interesting things going on, some interesting new entries other than Taylor Swift, so I was glad we got some variety. Um, that Lack Siren Beat song by Jason Derulo and Josh 685 is finally in the top 10. I don't know why this is charting. I stop listening to the song, guys. If you are, just kidding, but still, like, I still don't understand the appeal. Because since it got worst track of the week on one of the weeks we covered. Overall, yeah, a lot of the um, tracks that I guess were from Pop Smoke and Juice World have basically left the top 10. Um, and yeah, it's just interesting overall how things are changing. Um, some notes too that let's see here. AJR with Bang is still on here for 97 for some reason. Tootsie Slide is finally down at 75. That's interesting as well. The Climb Back, which was I think our best track of the week last week, is at 52. It went up a few spots, so that's pretty cool to see. Nothing else too crazy. So yeah, let's just get right into the new entries this week. First track came in quite low, but I was still really surprised to see it. And I'm surprised it's the only song that came in, honestly, from this album, which is 90. It came in at 95. The song is Perfect by Logic. This track is, I don't know if it's meant to be an interlude track. I haven't actually listened to this Logic album. I'm not an avid Logic listener, but I do have some sort of respect for him as a rapper. Um, I just never really got into like his like overall rapping style. Maybe because he's a little bit derivative from other rappers. I remember one time in college, um, the first time I heard him, or the first time it caught my attention, my roommate was listening to a track and just like, "Yo, is this Drake? Like, when did Drake put this out?" And he was like, "No, it's Logic." So, in a nutshell, that's kind of how I feel about Logic. He just sounds like other rappers, and this song is no exception. But I did like it. It's just really short. The flow is really good overall. It has an obvious Kendrick Lamar influence, so that being said, it's already a good track for me. Also, like kind of a childish Gambino influence. There's like this eerie key sampled beat. It's just overall very eccentric, but it really hits hard when the full beat kicks in with the production and everything. Only problem is the song is super short, and I don't know if it's meant to be an interlude or not. Next song that we'll cover was a bit of a surprise. Was Happy Anywhere featuring Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton. Um, yeah, this isn't like something very revolutional with Gwen Stefani and Blake doing a duo track. Apparently, they've been doing this the past few years, here and there, and or however long they've been together. I don't follow the relationship, but needless to say, this song overall to me is just very generic. It's somewhat uninspiring. It's very Nashville-like. It kind of just makes me wonder if is Gwen Stefani trying to break into the country scene, and if so, is she ever going to put out some solo material? The vocals are way too prominent in the mix. It kind of kills some things. Like overall, I think that mix was just a little hot. The drums kind of were overbearing as well. But overall, there's a bright color in it. The instrumentation is quite nice at the intro when there's like these banjos and guitar. That's honestly the most noteworthy thing of the track. I gave this a C, and I think I forgot to give Perfect by Logic a letter grade. That one is a B. Next is Lion on Ice by J. Cole, which I guess since these singles are coming out, there must be an album imminent. Needless to say, this is another nice track from J. Cole. There's he raps with a nice flow. It's an energetic performance and convincing. The hook is decent as well. You can barely hear the supporting embellishments thrown on the beat. I'd say that's probably one of the things I felt like could have been just more prominent. There's like this sultry aesthetic again, so I wonder if the album's going to be like that overall. There's some really heavy sub bass that totally engulfs the beat. J. Cole singing on this track as well. An interesting high distorted sample as well that's used in the track. So overall, I dug it. I gave it a B. Next one is what can I say about this one? This one was kind of bound to happen this summer. It's a Maroon 5 song called Nobody's Love. I don't know if this means Maroon 5 is gonna come out with an album this summer. I really hope they don't. Um, God. But aside from that, I don't think Maroon 5 needs much of an introduction. I think this is the first time me covering them on this podcast, but um, let's just cover the song. It's a very 80s sounding track. There's some bright electronic keys on here. These super reverby vocals just soaked in reverb. It's obviously pandering to like some 80s, I guess, Gen Xers. I think that's what they are. Um, there's like these muted eighth note guitar tones thrown in to give the song some flair. Uh, the melodic elements in the vocal line feature like several attempts to like paint a contemporary aesthetic though. So even though it's like the instrumentation production sounds like it came straight from the 80s, Adam Levine is still singing with like some generic vocal lines and I guess mannerisms that are common in pop music today. It kind of goes for like a forced deep message. It just kind of doesn't really deliver. Terrible cliches like this, like an '80s drum pickup section that leads into the last chorus. Like they had to throw that in there. I give this a C minus. So now we get into the part where we're gonna cover basically just the Taylor Swift stuff. So like I said before, if I did cover it in the review, there is not going to be much of an overview, just a letter grade, maybe like a note or two. So the first track we're covering off this Taylor Swift album, Folklore. I'm pretty sure I did cover it, you know, uh, somewhat thoroughly on the album review. Is the one I give it a C. It has this melancholic mood. It's hazy-ish. It's kind of a dry track. I'll just say that. Um, Next track was Cardigan, which is our number one track in the Hot 100. This track overall, I just gave it a B. I did cover it on the review. Um, to me, it just reminds me of Sufjan Stevens' Carrie and Lowell album. A lot of times, this kind of like mood and aesthetic, and even like a lot of the, I guess, compositions sound very similar to that album. I don't know why, it just keeps on coming back to that. But yeah, B on Cardigan. Last Great American Dynasty is the next track. Um, I actually like this song. I should have covered it on the review more, but it has like a postal service kind of flair to it, especially in the percussion. Just kind of like that kind of like fast, clippy production for indie pop, especially on like percussion. It's very similar to that here. There's some bright embellishments thrown in. It's piano based. There's some light guitar melodies in there. A bit of a lacking of a low end. I thought that was my biggest problem with the album. Production's just a little bit lackluster. The bridge has a nice energy to this track, and it's somewhat upbeat compared to the rest of the album. There's a charming nature to this track, and I give it a B plus. Exile featuring Bon Iver. Cool feature on this album. Gave this track a B. I did cover it. It's an earwormy chorus. Compositionally, it's very simple, but not a bad track. My Tears Ricochet, did cover that on the album as well. I gave it a C. This track is a little barren sounding to me. Um, yeah, it's very light. Low end is gone. Just issues I had with it overall. Mirror Ball, I did not cover on the album, but thoroughly album review. But this was probably one of the tracks that stuck out to me. Um, just how different it has been to most of Taylor's material over the years. It's very light. Um, it's very 90s like as well. It has like this indie rock, almost dream pop aesthetic. Something that you could find maybe from some bands from the early 2000s. No low end at all. The production is like super washed out. Hardly any fullness to the track, and when you're trying to go for like that dream pop aesthetic, the production should feel full. There should be some low end, and this track doesn't capture that. It's a little bit of a cheap. There's some cheapness to that, in my opinion. But I do like the effect in her voice, and I gave this track a B minus. Seven is the next track. I give it a B. That was covered on the review. Another track with like some Sufjan Stevens influence. August, B plus, covered it on the review. It gave me the very uh, some vibes of being very similar to that Donna Lewis song from the '90s, "You and I Always Forever," or "I Love You Always Forever." That track. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that. B plus on August. This is me trying. I gave that a B. Covered it as well. This track is interesting because there's no piano, and it's probably one of the better tracks on the album. Illicit Affairs. I gave this one a C. I did not cover it. This one has more of a light texture. Everything is just so buried still. You can't really hear much other than like Taylor's vocals. The guitar sounds a little too thin. There's no, not too into that bridge either in there. The backup vocal lines are weak. Um, Track does little to hold any interest, unfortunately. Invisible String, I covered. I gave it a B. It has a very folky aesthetic. It's a very pretty sounding song. Mad Woman, I did not cover thoroughly, and I should have because this is a pretty good track. It's more of like this singer-songwriter piano type material that the album kind of just embellishes or just indulges in. There's some angsty lyrical material. It has a very nice overall texture in the track and the ambience. A relaxed nature that contrasts with like the anger in Taylor's lyrics and performance. Um, there's little overall development again until the very end when there's some percussion, but there's some nice little elements thrown in the instrumentation. I wish they're just a little bit more audible. Overall, I gave it a B plus, not a bad track. Next track I did cover on the review, Betty, which I gave a B plus. It's vintage Taylor. It's really good. Peace did not cover on the album review. I give this one a B. I like the guitar riff or the bass riff that's here. It's nice and light, but it's also unconventional for at least Taylor Swift. The piano isn't used generically as well. I like that about it. the track doesn't really go anywhere. Unfortunately, it's underwhelming. I like the rhythmic ideas and the vocal lines that give the track momentum, and I give it a hoax. Did not cover that thoroughly. I give it a B. This is just more of that Sufjan Stevens influence. There's a pretty piano melody thrown in, some gorgeous string passages. Still quite underwhelming. Pretty aesthetics, but not very interesting. And yeah, that went pretty fast doing that way. But we will now go into worst track of the week, which is off Taylor Swift's album. Unfortunately, um, yeah, this song is Epiphany. This song really bothered me, and I really hate to be too critical, but um, how do I start? I think this is probably the reason I gave the review I did. This song is one of the main reasons I gave the review I did. It is probably one of the most boring tracks I've heard in a long time. And to me, it's just kind of inexcusable for an artist like Taylor Swift to put something like this out with all the resources she has, probably the most anyone could ever need. Um, Instrumentally, it's really uninteresting. Same with compositionally. It sounds like it's like a pseudo religious Christian song. Um, she's singing in a choir voice. It sounds like a piece that could have been written for perhaps a beginning, I guess, a cappella group or choir uh, that was meant to train, I guess, people in a youth church choir group that were learning to sing something in unison. And they just took that composition and Taylor Swift transcribed it so that she could sing it on a track. And that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Well, yeah, that's what we get. Something that is very sleepy, um, just little momentum on the track, little to no development. Um, I just don't know why this track what made the album. It sounds pretty, I guess, as like on a face value, but just did not enjoy it, unfortunately. Epiphany got worst track of the week, and we will go to best track of the week, which is not on Taylor Swift's album. I almost gave it to Betty, but I'm just tired of talking about Taylor Swift. I want to talk about something else, and I think this track overall is a little bit better. The track is titled Un Dia, One Day, parentheses, by J Balvin, Dua Lipa, Bad Bunny, and Tainy, which I don't know who Tainy is, but apparently he's a Puerto Rican producer that works in the reggaeton scene. Either way, this is just basically a Bad Bunny J Balvin track. One thing I really dug about it though was that it has like this very like airy like mood to it, and it has like this angelic synth in the background. It sounds very dramatic, and it kind of is something new almost. It's like a hybrid between like a reggaeton type beat thrown in and like a pop drum sound, but it's not like that pure reggaeton, very like uh, just very straightforward type of like percussion. Um, Dua Lipa sounds great on this track. I think she made it really great. Her vocals are on point. J Balvin has a decent verse, and he sings part of the chorus in Spanish as well. His part is probably just Dua Lipa's part, but just a Spanish version. And Bad Bunny just probably the reason I gave this best track of the week was Bad Bunny. He's just killing it right now. Everything he touches right now, it just sounds decent to like almost god tier. Um, he provides like a featured rap thing. He does what he does. It just sounds like good Bad Bunny, and it's done very nicely. The bass on the track really hits as well. The production is not bad. Perhaps it's a little too compressed, but I love the dreamy aesthetic to it, and I gave it best track of the week. It's a nice song, and yeah, that concludes best and worst track of the week for the week of August 8th. Stick around this week. I think I'm just going to throw in some more reviews this week. Maybe an idea for listen. But yeah, thanks for listening and take care of yourselves.